for tuning in and joining us. I am Ciro from Tech to the Rescue, and this is our Impact Partnerships webinar series. We are in the third edition of this series, where a tech partner and a social impact organization they worked with come together to share what they built together and what the collaboration was really like. So today's story comes from Kenya. It's about a set of AI features built into Dignitas LeadNow platform to strengthen how teachers and school leaders are trained and supported, delivered through the University College London Industry Exchange Network for Good. So I'm joined by three guests. We have Professor Graham Roberts, who is a co-developer of the UCL Industry Exchange Network, which has run student projects with external partners for 15 years. We have Sheena Visram, co-founder and chair of the IXN for Good, which connects UCL students with non-profits on global challenges, and Marita Adiambo, who is the EdTech Program Officer at Dignitas and who leads their digital learning work, including the LeadNow platform. So welcome, thank you so much for being here. And just to open the scene, maybe we can start introducing ourselves. So Marita, if you'd like to start with introduction, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Dignitas and the communities you serve, and maybe like where does LeadNow fit into your work?
Thanks, Shiro. So I think whenever I receive this question, especially about myself, I'd like to tell people as a result of working at Dignitas, I aspire to be a teacher actually, or I'm a teacher by inheritance because my parents were teachers. And I think working with Dignitas has made me appreciate teachers a lot. And in Kenya, there is a lot of prestige, especially if you are a teacher. And for the past 3 years that I've been working with Dignitas, especially supporting LeadNow, it has been quite transformative to just see the kind of impact that support can lead to in communities whereby resources are very scarce. And because of that, I'll introduce who Dignitas is and what we do. So Dignitas is a NGO in Kenya. It operates in Kenya. And we use innovative training and coaching approach to empower schools and educators in low-resourced communities so that they may transform students' opportunities. Back to you, Shiro.
That's great. Thank you for sharing your personal experience and ambition or aspiration to be a teacher. That really gives context to everything. And since also we are like with Sheena and Graham, who are professors and lecturers, right? It's a very educationally rich room to be in. So Sheena, could you introduce yourself if you'd like, but also the UCL Industry Exchange Network for Good? Like, what is it? Why does it exist? And how does it work?
Absolutely, Sarah. What a delight and joy to be here. And Marita, thank you for your introduction. It's always so heartwarming to hear. To introduce myself, my name is Professor Sheena Visram. I'm an honorary professor in practice at UCL Computer Science, where I've known the department for more than a decade. My interest sits in the adoption of emerging technologies, playing a close role with what they're going to go on and do to self-realize their potential. And a big part of that is also working in the humanitarian sector on tech for good. The Industry Exchange Network is not new. It's right, Sarah, when you said it's been around for more than 15 years. So UCL Computer Science, led by two professors. You'll see Graham is on the call, so Professor Graham Roberts and Professor Dean Muhammad Ali. They launched and set up the UCL Industry Exchange Network in 2011. What I think of it as doing is that it readies students for their careers. They work with partners to devise proof of concept projects that solve real life problems, which is quite different to traditional teaching in universities. At the same time, they have this opportunity to learn vital business skills. I think that it provides quite a disruptive and unique pedagogical approach, and it was actually established through Graham and Dean. They took a different, more experiential approach to the way in which students could learn skills as part of their taught curriculum, but also by collaborating with industry partners. And over the years, those partners have included Microsoft, IBM, NTT Data, Intel, Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Also across different sectors with international banks, with SMEs, with the National Healthcare Service, and creating gaming companies. So it's a huge and broad portfolio. Outside of UCL, there are some capstone programs, but really our hub does sit at UCL, where we have both undergraduate and master's students who dedicate time to these projects. And at master's level, they dedicate up to about 3 months onto these projects. And we're doing more and more multi-year projects, which means that we don't just partner with industry for one project. We often partner over a long-term number of sequential projects, and we're benefiting from that too. Now, onto the Industry Exchange Network for Good. Come 2020, I put in a request to say that why don't we have 1/5, 20% of these projects sitting with charities, NGOs, and within the humanitarian sector. And so with that, I co-founded and now direct the IXN for Good. And it exists because some of society's most important challenges, they sit at the intersection of technology and social impact. But these sectors, they rarely have the opportunity to innovate together. And I think you'll hear through the course of this webinar some of the real benefits in the field of education that we're managing to see, but not by taking a local voice, taking a global voice, getting to really understand what's happening in different parts of the world. And our model, it's simple, but it's really powerful. Students, they get an education that no lecture can provide. They get real time with partners, including Marita and her team. They learn how to navigate ambiguity, to collaborate across cultures and disciplines, and build technology that has got real consequences for real people. And for the organizations that we work with, I think they get quite excited because they get access to cutting edge thinking, research capability, this notion of rapid prototyping, and they have this opportunity to be able to explore these resources, which are otherwise quite difficult to realize and explore. Importantly, I think that the program in itself really marks that universities, well, we're not simply producing graduates. I see them as innovation partners that can help organizations, including charities like Marita's, to de-risk new ideas, to test out emerging technologies in a responsible way, and create evidence that informs future investment.
Thank you so much for sharing, Ishina. And I'd love to hear also a little bit from Graham. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your trajectory and shaping the IXN as well, or whatever you'd like to share with this regard.
Yes, well, I've been at UCL since 1987 in one form or another, so I obviously know it very well. And I follow the path of starting off as a postdoctoral researcher and then becoming a lecturer and ultimately a professor. And my focus has been particularly on teaching and teaching practice and delivery. And when I was the departmental tutor in sort of 2808 and that sort of time, I had the opportunity to set up what became the IXN. And we were very conscious at that point that while our students were doing projects, they were all internal and, in a sense, artificial. Whereas we realized that they needed to do something which had to get them engaging with people external to UCL in order to tackle real problems where there's not a predefined solution. And actually, one of the hardest things about the IXN projects is just finding out what the requirements are and understanding those, because it's quite often the case that the initial idea and requirements, although they're interesting, don't really define the problem, and you have to go through a process of doing that. So IXN has grown because our early partners were industry partners. That's why it's called the Industry Exchange Network. But it is worth emphasizing that now we engage with many kinds of organizations. So it's not just with the big tech companies, although they are very supportive of what we do, particularly when working with organizations like Dignitas and charities and so on. And we also do a lot in the medical area. So that's with the NHS in the UK, but also other medical organizations. So the journey has been very successful. We've expanded the IXN beyond UCL. So there's about a dozen other universities, mostly in the UK, but also in other countries, who now operate their version of the IXN. So we can provide the framework and the idea, and they adapt it to suit their conditions. And that's what we see as very important. One of UCL's missions is to be a global university that does a lot of outreach, does a lot of engagement. So we're not just inward looking. So I hope that's given you a bit of background. The IXN is something which operates on large scale. So this is not just a handful of projects. This is hundreds of projects per year. And in doing that, we've built up a huge number of contacts. And we're always open to new project partners, new ideas. So there'll be a link distributed, I think, to one of the web pages we have where you can find out further information if that's something that you would want to investigate further. Okay.
Yes, Graham, thank you. And I'm showing the link right now as a QR. You can see it on the screen. So if you're interested in learning more about IXN, that's a site that covers as an overview and also contact details. So moving on to the collaboration itself, I'm curious to ask, because IXN is obviously very acquainted with cross-sector partnerships, as we just saw. But Marita, how about these cross-sector partnerships? Has Dignitas been involved before? Were there any expectations going in, hesitations, or how was the experience?
I will say that initially, I think when Tech to the Rescue had reached out to us and told us, oh, we have a partner for you. I think there's usually hesitancy because as a charity, as an NGO, it's usually hard to package, not hard necessarily, but, a partner to understand we are not building for us, we are building for other people, and we are keen on making sure we're able to meet their needs. So I'll say that this was our first tech partnership. And we were excited actually because of the chance it offered us to be able to build the AI tool that we were building or integrating into LeadNow. And I think once we met the team, our expectations, I think, skyrocketed, of course. We were like, yes, I think we found the right partner. And who was able to understand us. So for us, it was, I don't think initially we had any hesitancy. We felt like we found the right partner to push us to the next level.
And what, if you could tell us a little bit about what was the challenge that Dignitas set out to solve? Like, I understand that LeadNow, the platform, was already serving thousands of teachers. So my question is, why bring an external tech team now, and why AI? What was the challenge to solve there?
So Generally, Dignitas, the challenge that we actually solve is an education problem. So, and we solve it through partnering with schools and education actors across Kenya. And the gap is actually is that schools on the margins, especially in low-resourced communities, are often excluded from equitable resource allocation and meaningful support. But they still play a role in reaching vulnerable learners. So imagine a situation whereby you walk into a classroom and we have a teacher called Mary, and Mary is teaching grade 1 learners. So grade 1 learners, and as she's teaching grade 1 learners, she realizes that some of her students, or as you're observing, some of her students are not confident, or they are unable to read the right sounds. And in that school, they are only able to employ Maria, who just finished her high school last year. So it means she's not trained to be a teacher, but that's the school can only employ Maria. But it doesn't mean that. They have to turn away Maria from actually helping from helping the community. So where we come in is that this learner still has a right to actually access good instructional um, good instructional quality. And we come in by training a teacher like Maria. And by the end of that program that we do is that the teacher is able to feel confident to support different learners. Considering in such context, you still find special needs learner. And since ever since time, especially in the normal public schools or low-resourced schools, you will still find those learners, but the teachers are not well equipped to support these learners. And on top of that, we also have a new curriculum in Kenya called the competency-based curriculum. So teachers from private schools to public schools are also struggling to adapt into that curriculum. So of course we train and coach those teachers so that they can be a shift in practice. And how does LeadNow comes in here? So LeadNow was conceived 3 years ago, and it was conceived during the COVID time. And as we were thinking of what do we want to do next, how do we want to reach more teachers? Because as an NGO, sometimes we are constrained by resources, but our goal was to be able to reach 2 million learners. And to some extent, as much as you wanted, unless you employ 100 more employees, it will have been hard. But also, we saw technology as a way to scale our impact. So we were able to conceive LeadNow, build it. And as we launched it and have been implementing it, we have done several research that was able to inform our AI journey in integrating it into LeadNow. And through the research we did and through other programs to understand more about AI, is we realized that if we integrate this AI into LeadNow, because currently with what we had with LeadNow, we had to complement it with in-person training and coaching. So if we are to go to a certain place whereby our staff members are not able to reach because of certain reasons, we want LeadNow to be able to support fully without necessarily, we are not trying to replace human touch, but we understand the communities we work with and what can happen, and the kind of, we want any learner, Teacher Maria, Teacher Ken, to be able to actually access good quality professional training and coaching.
Okay, perfect. I completely It's a perfect example of how AI can help alleviate bottlenecks or like improve the scale potential that your organization has right now, right? So I'm also curious to ask you, Sheena, how did you find the process with Tech to the Rescue? and the IXN working together to identify this precise project, and maybe what made Dignitas and the LeadNow platform the right fit for the student team?
Sure, that's a great question. And, we've said this before, that at the IXN, we're really accustomed to cross-sector collaborations, and it's central to how we operate as an IXN. But every single partnership, it teaches us something new, and that was definitely the case here. One of the things that was really appealing when I joined the matchmaking sessions that you so expertly curate through Tech to the Rescue is that when Dignitas were talking about what they sought and the problems that they were experiencing, they were very human problems. It didn't start with technology. That was a really good indicator on my part. In fact, it was really encouraging to hear that actually kind of Dignitas, Marita, you had a really mature coaching methodology and you already had a platform, LeadNow. You were not starting from scratch. You were already supporting thousands of teachers. We do a big kind of a focus at the beginning of projects and leading into projects on requirements gathering of what it is that the students would be able to focus on. And one of the first things that we learned is that one of your challenges, it wasn't a lack of data. It was that some of the valuable information existed in lots of different places, and experiences of using your platform could be optimized. It was a really human-centered approach to the way in which you supported teachers, and all of those things were very, very promising to us. From a Tech to the Rescue perspective, you played a critical role in that because you understood both the ecosystems. You understood where nonprofits have got strategic challenges, where technology could genuinely address a real world problem, not technology for technology's sake. But you also understood what it means to kind of create learning opportunities for students. And that's what we really sought for our students at UCL through the IXN initiative.
Thank you so much for the kind words. And I also hope that we continue collaborating in finding and identifying new projects for the students as well. So moving on to what it was actually like to collaborate, I'm wondering, Graham, like, how was the work structured? If you could walk us through the student team, if they had any supervision behind them, and how that collaboration ran between London and Kenya across, also the students have their academic terms. So yeah, I'm curious to hear a little bit about that.
Okay, so this project ran for about 5.5 months, from October through to the following March. And there was a team of 5 second-year undergraduate computer science students. And the way the projects are organized is that we have weekly lab classes, they have a TA assigned. So all the way through, the team is supported, met every week. They can tell us what they've been doing or ask us questions or say, oh, we've got a problem, can you try and help us sort it out? And there's also the industry partner, which in this case was IBM, who is able to provide technical support. So we have very good contacts with IBM, and they are able to provide mentors, so volunteers within IBM developers who can act as mentors, which is also another valuable resource. And the first stage of the project is to make contact, to go and talk to Marita and people like that, and find out what's it all about, what's really wanted, and from that derive a working set of requirements, and then start following through the exploration, the development process, all the time being keeping contact, getting feedback, and so on. So it's not the case that the students are just sort of thrown into it and left alone in the hope they might do something. It's a fully supported process so that the students not only have the experience, but they are learning, they're guided. So it's a controlled in that sense. And one of the key things about the IXN, if you look at, it's the exchange network. So we try and make sure things go in both directions. It's not just students going one direction, it's feeding back to organizations. So the results of the project have gone back to EdTech, and hopefully that will be something we can make use of. They learnt from that. We've all learnt from that. And in this project and many others at the moment, there is a real focus on AI, using LLMs, local models, or large models rather. And there's this tension between, you can use commercial paid for services, but they are expensive, versus trying to run what we call small models on the computers you have already in your offices and schools, and exploring that and finding out what's actually possible, what works. But it's done in a way where, because of the interaction, because of the feedback, the to and fro, that we are exploring reality in the sense of what really works, as opposed to, oh, that seems like a good idea, but no real concept of whether it makes sense, particularly for the external partners. And this is an assess project. So at the end of this, the students submit a detailed report and what we call the system artifacts, which is all the software developed. And that goes through an assessment process. So they get marked for that. It's part of their degree program, and they get the feedback from that. And also, as I noted earlier, the results are fed back to the partner organization. So it's not that we keep it all or anything like that. The whole point is to feed back in order to hopefully see where that goes in the future and what can be made of what's been developed. So that's a sort of overview of the process.
I can imagine the viewers might be a bit curious about what did the team actually build. So in terms of like AI features within LeadNow, and also if there were any like very interesting problems that the students had to solve.
Yes, it was about integrating AI support, delivery support, scaling up so that this works reliably in local conditions, supporting relevant features that matter in terms of supporting a teacher in a school, noting that resources are always finite, communication might be slower than you want because of network connections and things like that. And with the existing platform, looking at how these additional features can be integrated in to make it a better platform. So it's not simply here's something new, it's building on the foundations that are in place. And to some extent, it's doing the experiments, trying things out. So ideally, the things you try out turns out to be useful, but sometimes you try something and find it's not useful, but that's still valuable because you don't need to spend more time on that when it's not going to take you anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of to build upon this, my question to Marita would be, what has this tech made possible for Dignitas and for the teachers and education officers that you support? Maybe you can share some examples.
I think for us to say is that our biggest gain, or what it actually made possible for us, is that I think, especially in the NGO space, is that if you are pursuing technology, it's usually such a huge risk. And it helped us build a foundation of the AI foundation. And what we actually had imagined when it comes to AI coaching. And currently, we are actually testing it to see if it holds the pedagogical value, and being able to launch it to teachers based on what we have tested. But for us, it opened up an opportunity for us to build something that at first was a little bit intimidating, and also learn from the students and the UCL team.
And were there any
Yeah.
moments that were, maybe this question goes openly to anyone in the room, but that were a bit harder than expected, or moments of frictions in terms of meeting this tech with nonprofits and going in applying technology to this field? Anything that you had to work through that comes to mind?
From our end, I think I think the only biggest challenge was balancing the pace of the project with the realities of running a live platform that thousands of teachers depend on. So to some extent, we realized we couldn't simply experiment without considering the impact on our users. So we had to be thoughtful about priorities and timelines.
I can also kind of add to that. I guess some of the challenges were also that this was a new partnership. We were getting to learn about each other's working styles. We had a difference in time frames, so trying to even the logistics of making sure we could book in regular meeting times that was suitable for everybody. I'm so utterly proud of the student team. These were 5 students who hadn't worked as a team together before. So in addition to being part of a talk program and learning as they were going, they were also figuring out how to work really, really effectively as a team of 5, and also unpacking the problem itself. Graham alluded to this. I get really excited because new questions arise every single week. And to me, that's part of the joy of IXN projects. But it can also be quite destabilizing. You think, yes, I'm answering the right question that we've thought through and understood, but the more questions you ask, and you'll know this, it opens up even more possibilities. And I think the transition from, okay, we're not just developing as a student team a large language model or a chatbot, we're exploring how AI can connect information sources to create a continuous coaching experience. And that's quite different. And I think that realization and developing a workflow around educators was perhaps a grounding moment for us all.
And Sheena, you often, well, I heard you speak about the value of proof of concept and rapid prototyping, and we, Graham also touched upon this and as well. So I'm wondering if you could maybe tell us a bit about why you think this matters in general, but also for nonprofits, and
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. I do. I talk a lot about rapid prototyping and the value of it, the role of experimentation, proof of concepts. And I'll describe its value and importance in 2 different ways. The first, in terms of what we expect from the students, and then how it addresses some of the challenges that we see, especially within the humanitarian sector and with some of our NGOs and charities. So by taking an approach that is more of a rapid prototyping approach, it is a little bit more dynamic, it's agile, it's experimentation in kind of real time, and it allows for very short-term 3-month projects in a way in which is achievable. We want to set our students up to learn, to succeed, to develop something meaningful. But the expectation is never that students would build a finished commercial AI product in 12 weeks. And I think that was very important to note down and make clear from the start. It was that they would explore what becomes possible when educational expertise, operational knowledge, and AI capability are brought together in a structured way. And that is quite different. It really sets the tone for students. In exactly the same way, if we would talk about developing an end-to-end product with a charity who think to themselves, my goodness, we've got, our business as usual to deal with. We're incredibly busy. We're supporting teachers. We're supporting a huge need that students have. And this is a really big ask on top of that. By taking a slightly different approach, it allows them to, and I describe it as dip their toes. I think that charities face a very different innovation challenge from commercial organizations. And that's why this approach works. It's often a case of operating with limited resources, being accountable to funders, not being able to invest in really expensive technologies that haven't yet demonstrated value. And that's why rapid prototyping is so powerful. And it takes a number of different forms. It can go from the ideation to the low fidelity sketches and prototypes, which I still love, to things that are higher fidelity walkthroughs of what a system might look like, to what we build out that can actually demonstrate value. And I think every single one of those touch points is incredibly important and value as part of both learning, but also as part of demonstrating value so that we can ask better questions before making larger investments.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I empathize because those are challenges that we at Tech to the Rescue take very seriously. And, we put our whole ecosystem and our programs to work on these questions. So we have the AI Impact Lab, which is the structured 8 to 10 week bootcamp where the social impact organizations can incubate their ideas. And then we have the AI Scaling Program that provides ongoing support and obviously the matchmaking with the tech experts like yourself. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about where LeadNow is today, and if there's any plans, Marita, in terms of taking that work forward that you'd like to share with us or with the viewers.
Thanks, Graham. So I think so for us, I think when UCL had handed over, I think what they had done, it wasn't necessarily like an end of the project. It was more of like the beginning. And currently we are in the testing phase. So we have our internal team, coaches, who are currently validating the experience to just ensure that the feedback that the AI is producing is pedagogically sound and genuinely supports reflection before we roll it out more. And I think once we are confident in the experience, we'll roll it out and monitor user engagement and just gather feedback to understand how educators or our teachers are interacting with the feature and where we can actually improve it.
Mm-hmm. So quite an iterative learning progress moving forward. It makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And is there any advice that you, from your experience, Marita, that you think you could give other nonprofits that are considering to embark on a tech partnership or that are maybe nervous about handing that part of a live product to a tech team? What make this one work? Any words of advice or encouragement?
Oh, that's good. So I'll tell you a story that is quite interesting. So when we were working with the students, I remember we were proposing some ideas, and the students proposed an idea. The UCL team proposed an idea, and I remember us saying, "Oh, that's great," but our teachers don't have sophisticated phone. And the most interesting thing, I remember when we were doing some testing, they had actually considered that. And for us, without necessarily even us coming to say that, oh, we launched the project we did, but that moment was actually a success because for us, it was a measure of they really understood us. So the advice I will actually give is that will be to any organization that's considering tech partnership is that never think of it as you are handing over your product. Think of it as you are building together.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is a successful partnership, tech partnership, isn't built on trust alone. So it's built on clear expectation, shared goals, open communication and understanding. And for us, that's what worked with UCL team.
Thank you so much, Marita. And I'd like to pose that same question to Sheena and Graham, but on the other side, maybe out of your experience working with nonprofits, for the tech professionals or the academics, the students who are curious about this kind of work, who want to see their skills applied to socially impactful projects, anything that they should know before embarking on a journey like that?
I think it is learning to listen, but also to guide the conversations so that they're moving towards something that's feasible. It's very easy to get carried away and conceptually think, oh yes, we can go and build that. And it turns out that that conceptual idea, trying to actually turn it into reality, if it's possible, it turns out to be very complicated and so on, and misses the target. And it's surprising how often it's actually the simple solutions, the straightforward things lead to the best solutions. But even those, they take time and effort to get right. So simple does not imply trivial. It implies that things are working effectively, streamlined, maintainable. So it's not just launch it and leave it, as it were. It's getting it into place and developing and maintaining. And certainly we prefer to, or aim to, continue the engagement, continue with more projects in the future. So as we get feedback or people get new ideas, can feedback in new project proposals and build on that. So we have a lot of projects which we call a project, but they're really multi-stage projects over a number of years, and that works very effectively.
Yeah, can I add in a couple of extras? Graham's covered that so
Yeah,
beautifully. But if I was to take a broader perspective, I'll say a couple of things. Firstly, if it's to kind of technologists or even students, I think what we really get this wonderful opportunity to learn and appreciate is what responsible innovation actually looks like. We talk an awful lot about it in abstract terms, but in actual fact, this particular project and so many others remind me that successful deployment of emerging technologies, and I cover a number of emerging technologies, not just AI, but the principle is the same. It's actually not about replacing expertise at all. I think we really learned it was about amplifying expertise and how technology can be used as a vehicle. I think so much of that requires you to open your mind out. And as Graham had said, to really listen and appreciate the finer detailing of how technology is experienced in the real world. And do you know what? We talk an awful lot as technology professionals that some of, the most interesting AI or technology challenges are found in places like Silicon Valley. And I'm going to challenge back on that. I think the education that we have from what we've found in classrooms, in healthcare systems, in communities, where even the smallest of improvements can have life-changing impact, is one of the biggest lessons that we can take away, but it also requires coming prepared to recognize that.
Thank you so much for closing it so beautifully, Sheena. And yeah, we're hitting the 45-minute mark. It's been a super interesting conversation. I want to thank you, each one of you, Sheena, Graham, and Marita, for the willingness to share your experience. We have viewers here that are might be from the nonprofit field, the social impact field, and also tech professionals. So on whichever side you are, there's a space for you at Tech to the Rescue. We are a global ecosystem advocating for tech for good, and there's we are hoping to hear from you if you're interested in embarking on a similar journey like Sheena, Graham, the IXN for Good students, and Marita embarked on this opportunity. So with that, yeah, thanks thanks to our viewers, and see you in our next edition of the Impact Partnerships webinar.